available on the 31st of March. And under expenditure, we'll still know only after the 31st of March. But also there's slightly better growth. There's better effects from the depreciated rand in terms of certain incomes for mining companies, or better corporate taxes coming through as well. So that's an encouraging sign. Okay, that's not a big dramatic change, but an important signal that when we have some positive returns coming our way, we will continue to do what we can to reduce our deficit.
You always speak about, increasingly so in the past few budget speeches, wasteful expenditure, corruption, scandals around tenders. I thought I would hear more about the Chief Procurement Officer in your budget speech. Any reason why I didn't?
Well, you heard quite a lot. I mean, you can't give a whole speech just on the Chief Procurement Officer. So we said, firstly, that we are going to, if necessary, look at the big tenders that we've already awarded through either government directly or through one of its parastatals. And we mentioned PRASA in that context. And now that's 100 billion rand, or those are big numbers that we're talking about. And if there's a little bit of mischief of even a few percent, that makes a big difference to where we're going. We also said, secondly, that we want to buy big things, commodities, aeroplanes, scanning machines for hospitals, and other types of equipment on a centralized basis so that we get best value for money. But also, with for example, the Department of Health, we check properly whether you actually need one. There are many examples where people have purchased those pieces of equipment, but they lie in a room. Thirdly, as we showed in respect of the office leases, or accommodation leases, we're being overcharged by the private sector in some instances. Yeah. In other instances, more space has been sold than is actually required. So somebody is up to some maneuvering in these areas. So that's the third example. Fourth example I gave was the Office of the Accountant General, who's undertaken tens of forensic investigations. Some of them get resolved in what is called a civil way, so you don't go to court necessarily. But others we give over to prosecution, or we give feedback to a department and strengthen their capabilities as well. And this office will gain momentum as we go. And importantly, we want to get civil society involved, so that where there are big purchasing items in government, there's not just government people involved. We could get people, as I said, from religious organizations, retired trade unionists, or retired business people. Come and keep an eye and help us to understand what's going on here and lend us your expertise.
You speak a lot about cooperation, Minister, business, labor, government, saying that this is the ultimate goal, to actually look for prosperity in the future on the jobs front. Does it not make you unhappy when you look at something like an unresolved strike at the moment?
No, but you see, in our business we can't just be unhappy. We've got to constantly look for ways to break through. We've got to constantly appeal to all of the constituencies to cooperate. In the last 18 months or more, the President has brought these parties together. We are talking at different levels. You don't necessarily publicize all of these meetings. There are areas where there's 5 or 6 working groups between government officials and the private sector to concretely identify, for example, regulations that get in the way, and amend the regulations so that we can accommodate faster movement in terms of, for example, investments. But we need to take that to another level completely, where, like in many other countries around the world, these key actors in society come together and say, we agree, that's the future we want for our country. We agree, each of us are going to make certain sacrifices to actually get there. And thirdly, we agree that certain immediate things need to be done, let alone long-term things need to be done. Now, we do it on a sporadic basis in South Africa. I also gave examples of very important partnerships that are happening in one or other area. And that's a useful basis to actually build up. But leaders in different sections of society now have to bite the bullet. And either we go on squabbling, and then we muddle through, like many economies in the world, which means you don't have any dramatic development and growth in the economy. Therefore, you aren't going to create the right levels of jobs. Therefore, you're not going to reduce unemployment and inequality quickly enough. And if we want a society where we want less of those negatives, then all of us must make some investment in that process and make it work. So, in a sense, it's a challenge to South African leadership. Which of you are willing to come to the party? Which of you are willing to take a bold step forward? And are we able to say that we are going to leave our immediate interests aside and look at the longer-term interests, or at least reconcile those two in some way?
That was my colleague.